Just missing that portion. I think just the force of your personality is not going to allow people like Harold Bloom to exist like a century from now. I don't really see that happen.
But see, the thing is, I don't want people to dismiss Bloom because I dismiss him or deconstruct.
No, I agree. But that's what happens, right? That's just kind of inevitable. Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with that part.
But the whole issue, I think, comes down to people have to think for themselves. And as one of the guys on the E-list once said, thinking is hard, and people don't want to think, and people want to latch onto these ideas that are bandied about, good, bad, or indifferent, and they are going to latch onto them whether I want them to or not. Artists, a critic has to be a less selfish thing than an artist. You can have some good selfishness, but you also want people to put the art out there so that people can take what you've done and build upon it. One of the problems with art and why it hasn't moved as fast as forward as science, I believe, is that artists are more intensely selfish. Not to say that scientists aren't selfish. Certainly you have the Copes and the Marshes. They wanted to be the bone guy that discovered the great dinosaur. Or you had Leibniz and Newton with the calculus, and Tesla and Edison. And Tesla's a good example. I mean, if you looked online, you think Tesla was the greatest genius ever. But in reality, if you ask most scientists, Tesla was a mediocre scientist. He had a lot of wacky, far-out ideas, but it's a romantic notion that he was the genius that was screwed over by society. His ideas, are pretty easily dismissed now. A lot of his ideas about electricity and other things. Much in the same way that Leonardo da Vinci's stuff, while it's fanciful, da Vinci was probably a better artist than he was a scientist. But you have to, in art, try to clear the table to get other artists their room. You don't want to be such a towering figure. Like, obviously Whitman is, in a sense, the bottleneck for which all poetry before Whitman funneled into Whitman, and everything since has been touched by Whitman coming out all over the world. Even the most remote tribal poetries, as they would call them, have been in some way affected by Walt Whitman. But this doesn't mean that you have to slavishly, or that Whitman wanted people to just write like him. If you look at Hart Crane, if you look at Robinson Jefferson, if you look at Ezra Pound, even, and these are just white males within a century of Whitman's coming, they were certainly affected by him to a certain degree. But what often happens is there are a lot of selfish artists that want to be the Buddha. They just want people to follow them blindly and worship them, and they want to be the head of whatever ism there is. I don't ever want there to be a Schneider-ism. I don't want it to be there critically. I don't want it to be there artistically. And you will know a fraud. Anyone who claims this is the way Dan Schneider would have written this in 500 years or 200 years, or Dan Schneider, don't listen to them. Because I don't have an ism. I don't have a worldview in that sense, other than a few basic principles that you can take and apply to whatever direction you're going in. This gets back to what you had mentioned to Joel, is that art being a verb more than a noun. It's how you do things, how you approach art. That's the thing that's more fundamental to what I do. You can't write like me, just like I couldn't, if you gave me a camera even and the best cinematographer, I couldn't or wouldn't want to make a film like Stanley Kubrick or Orson Welles, as great as they are. But a lot of people think that just aping a great artist in some way is becoming a great artist, and that's absolutely wrong. You have to have yourself in it. And I've had a number of people, a couple of guys on the E-list who've been sending me their poetry, and I'm saying, where are you in that poetry? You can write some technically good poems, but they're just generic. You have to put yourself in that in some way.